There we go. Bruh. Oh my god. Just do it. Do it right.
Sodor's Legend of the Frickin' Lost Treasure.
Bruh, just finally.
Sodor's Legend of the Frickin' Lost Treasure. Wow. Just wow. I'm not even sure how to describe how amazing this film is. This is definitely the most cinematic a Thomas film has ever been. Even the actual Thomas movie that was made for the theaters doesn't even come close to the level of epicness that Lost Treasure did. I still find it hard to believe that Hit and Mattel actually approved the premise for this. It's so epic, so action-packed, so fast-paced, so funny, and rather mature for a Thomas the Tank Engine production. I mean, just look at this.
Go insane.
Compared to previous Thomas specials, good or not, none of them have ever been this crazy. It's not a perfect film, and I'll explain why in a bit, but it's a pretty dang good one. Nothing felt, well, not nothing, but most of the movie didn't feel forced, and a lot of what happens and what is said by the characters feels natural. The set pieces in the animation is absolutely stunning, more so than usual. The crashes are some of the most intense ever, and the music is off the charts. I've always really liked Robert Hartshorn's score for the series, even back in season 8, but he really outdid himself here. The fact he used a real orchestra to compose really just how far the team tried to push the envelope with this film, and the effort definitely shows. Now, I could talk about the stuff that everyone's already talked about. I could talk about how revolutionary it was to feature a human character as the film's antagonist. Talk about how wonderful and surreal it was to see the small railway engines on screen for the very first time. Talk about how so many older characters returned for some screen time. But the thing is, you already know my views on this. I share pretty much the same views as everyone else on all this, and what I would say about it would be no different than what's pretty much already been said. That, and I don't want to sit here and record myself rambling for 2 hours. I'd rather spend that time talking about the film as a film, and some of the things that did and didn't work for me. I'm going to give Lost Treasure a fair and honest review. I'm going to talk about things I liked, things I didn't like, and finish strong with positives.
Now then, I'm going to do something I call the compliment sandwich, where I say something good, then talk about where you need improvement, and then end with something good.
Whatever you gotta do. So without further ado, let's get on with the good, the bad, and the ugly of Lost Treasure. Let me start with Andrew Brenner and his previous Thomas films. Compared to King of the Railway and Tale of the Brave, it's definitely obvious that Lost Treasure is the superior of the three. I don't want to rag on the guy, but Brenner tends to have pacing issues when it comes to telling the bigger stories. I gave him benefit of the doubt with King of the Railway because that was the team's first ever time writing a Thomas production. They were still in the process of finding the series' voice. But King of the Railway, while good in many aspects, felt way too disjointed. There was never one solid main story being told, as it just felt like 4 different episodes interweaved together with some overarching plot about a castle being built. They could have easily split King of the Railway into separate episodes and pulled the dinos and discoveries. The second film, Tale of the Brave, definitely shown signs of improvement from a writing standpoint. And while I absolutely love Tale of the Brave, I admit it also falls victim to similar issues. Tale of the Brave felt like a consistent of 3 different stanzas. The first stanza was heavily focused on Thomas and the clay pits, then we kind of shift focus over to Percy and Gator, and then it becomes a story about Percy and James. Thomas is only major to the story at the beginning and then gets kind of taken out of it and then brought back in towards the end. The new characters in both these films also don't really add a whole lot to the plot either, aside from the token main newbies, Steven and Gator respectively. If you had to summarize these films in a 5-sentence synopsis or so, it'd be impossible to summarize King of the Railway without mentioning Steven, or Tale of the Brave without Gator, because they're the only new characters that are essential to the plots. The other new characters like Millie, Connor and Caitlin, Marion, Timothy, and Reg add literally nothing and exist because, well, they gotta sell merchandise, right? Merchandise of which they can stamp the movie's logo onto the packaging and make the toys feel more exclusive. I do really appreciate they heavily expand on these characters in the following seasons and make use of them as actual characters. But looking at just the movies alone, they're pretty much ones.
Well, there's a surprise.
Sodor's Legends of the Lost Treasure, however, improves on all of these issues. The story does not feel as disjointed as before, and the subplots actually relate and later play into the main story being told. Marion's whole plotline with the magical little engines and finding the treasure does eventually play into the main story, when she digs up the chest and it becomes the MacGuffin during the epic chase finale. The events that unfold throughout feel like a natural progression of a story. The new characters are very much important to the plot, unlike the predecessors. Sailor John, Skiff, and Ryan are all very central to this story and have some sort of effect on the direction it goes. They actually feel like essential characters and not just merchandise gimmicks. All in all, Lost Treasure is definitely a huge improvement for the new team when it comes to telling a bigger story. It's not flawless, but hopefully by the next special, they'll have it pretty much down to perfect. So as much as I want to praise this film and call it the best Thomas film ever, I do have issues with it. I have issues with every Thomas anything, and I believe this wouldn't be a fair review if I only mentioned the good and not the bad. There's not a whole lot wrong with Lost Treasure, but there are a couple scenes that are quite groan-worthy. First up is the fan service scene. Donald and Douglas's intro into the movie. I've already talked about this before, and you know my thoughts on it. This particular scene feels incredibly forced, and looking at it from the perspective of the grand story being told, I just don't understand why they decided bringing Donald and Douglas into this was a good idea. It's nice to see them again, but why introduce them and give them this whole spiel with Duck just to do absolutely nothing later on? What was the point? Other than obvious fan service, there's no reason. If Donald and Douglas absolutely had to be included in this movie in some way, this is how they should have done it. They should have done something similar to what they did with Oliver in Tale of the Brave. Oliver only makes a brief cameo in that movie, but goddamn did it get fans excited when they saw him in that trailer. A lot of hype got built up and everyone wanted to hear his voice and get a good look at him. And sure enough, when Toad's Adventure finally got released, he became a fan favorite. Why not do the same with the Scots here? They could have cameoed throughout the film, pulling goods trains or working in the construction yard and whatnot. You would see them in the background and grow eager to get a good look at them. Then at the end, maybe during the parade sequence, we get a close
The green one, the last straw, I think it's called.
Yeah.
up of the two of them so we can. It wouldn't speak or anything, or
Yeah, that kind of stopped me.
maybe not even be referred to by name, but at least they'd be there. The hype would be so high, and then come season 20, they finally get that episode to themselves they can star in and receive their official reintroduction back into the show. Forcing them in here with so little to do just didn't sit right with me. And as much as I am against forcing Donald and Douglas into this, I will admit that the scene where they pull the pirate ship through Arlesboro Harbor is freaking amazing. cinematic standpoint. No narration, no dialogue, just a beautiful scene focused on visuals, music, and build.
Bruh. Oh, crap.
But may I suggest something that could have possibly made this scene better? This may sound totally off the wall, but instead of having Donald and Douglas pull the ship, why not Ryan? I mean, Ryan's official bio states that he's an affable engine, capable of doing any job. The whole point of Ryan as a character was to be bigger, better, and stronger than Thomas. He was brought into the story to make Thomas feel threatened and vulnerable. But we never really see anything from Ryan in the film that would give Thomas a reason to feel threatened by his being there. From what the film presents us with, Thomas just has beef with Ryan because he replaced him on his branch line for a little bit.
Sir Topham Hatt has taken my branch line away and given it to some other tank engine called Ryan.
Having Ryan pull the ship to the harbor would only benefit the story in several ways. One, it would show not
Alright, let's go.
tell the audience visually that Ryan actually is an affable, strong engine and really is capable of doing any job, even as big as this. It'd be a nice little character development moment for a rather vanilla character. 2, say Thomas returned from the steamworks at this time and saw Ryan pulling the ship, and maybe Sir Topham Hatt is there at the harbor praising him. Seeing this with his own eyes would definitely give Thomas reason to feel threatened by Ryan and dislike him. It's not so important that the audience knows that Ryan is strong and affable, but it's very important that the audience knows that he is stronger and more affable than Thomas. We as an audience would feel more for Thomas and end up rooting more for him as the story progresses. But instead they had Donald and Douglas do it because fan service. My second issue is this scene.
I'll see you later.
Okay.
I hate this part of the movie for so many reasons. What was the point of this Henry subplot? I know really the whole point of it was to have a character give some sort of expository dialogue that explains Captain Kelly and how the pirate ship got there in the first place, and having Salty be the character to tell this story makes sense, as he's the only logical character that would know anything about these sorts of mystic tales. But why did it have to be Henry and some other characters that had nothing he told it to? Henry comes into the movie out of nowhere and doesn't do a dang thing after this scene, besides running around like a scared little wuss. Why not use, gee, I don't know, Thomas? Your
Bro, the Sigma.
main character.
Yeah, I messed up.
You're a little wuss. Why not use, gee, I don't know, Thomas, your main character? Maybe he's sent to collect cargo from random docks for the construction yard, and Salty spots him. Arr, good to see you out and about again, matey. After your big fall and all. Then Porter asks him if he heard about Rocky finding the pirate ship in the cavern. Thomas naturally retaliates and tells him that he was the one who found it, not Rocky. Salty then tells Thomas and Porter the tale of Captain Callies. Cue, flashback, montage sequence. It would make so much more sense for Thomas to know the origins of the pirate ship, as Thomas is the character who connects all the plot lines together and carries the story. And Thomas, now aware of the lost pirate tale, would be more motivated as a character in following the ghost boat when he initially sees it later that night, instead of going after it just because. He'd say something like, I don't believe it, Salty was right. The lost pirate is real, and goes to investigate for himself. Why the friggity frack do they think bringing Henry to this was a good idea. Was this the result of Mattel butting in and telling the writers they had to include more of the Steam Team characters in this? If they absolutely had to include this bit with Henry, then it needed to be paid off later with some scene where Henry either confronts the lost pirate or plays some sort of role in the final showdown. This is the low point of the movie for sure, and it could have been so
Ask Ernie.
easily fixed if the script was given maybe just one more rewrite and tightened up just a bit before entering production. My third issue is, sadly, the small railway engines. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved seeing them in